Governor Phil Murphy, thank you for being here. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Same, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I remember years ago a reporter asking former Assembly Speaker Jack Collins about running for governor. And he said, "Are you asking if I want to be governor or run for governor? Because those are two very different things." So we have the stage set for this year's gubernatorial debate. And I'm curious, are you a little bit relieved that you don't have to be on a debate stage again?
Oh, for sure. Debating is a lift for sure. Preparing for it at the actual debate, it's high stakes stuff.
Yeah.
Having said that, the actual job of being governor is high stakes stuff. So I have to say now, almost 8 years into this, it is. I view the debating part of this in a little bit of a different context. It's also different when you're running the first time than when you're running as an incumbent for re-election. Those are also very different dynamics, but I'm very happy to be sitting this one out.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. You've done 4 general election debates. How does it work? What's the prep like? What are the candidates thinking? What are they going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I'll focus, Laura, on the first time because that's the most relevant. I think running for re-election as an incumbent, you've got a different dimension than when you're running for the first time. So for Mikey and Jack, I assume it is similar to what we went through, which is number one, you got a big fat book with tabs of issues that you got to be deeply schooled in. Secondly, you're doing mock debates in front of a group of your advisors with somebody playing the other role and then doing critiques of that afterward. And then I think there's, at the very end, there's back sort of solitude studying anything in that big fat book you want to go over or any lesson you learned in the debate prep to make sure you're going to remember that. And it's a rigorous process. There's no question about it. You can't mail it in. You've got to block everything else out and focus on that fat book and on those preparation mock debates that you do. And then if you do that well, you're well equipped on debate night. If you mail it in, you're probably not going to be as well equipped.
Yeah. Well, do you have any Phil Murphy rules for debate prep? Getting psyched up for that game day. And also, you've been bombarded with a lot of information. How are you ensuring you're hitting your talking points, remembering what everybody has told you, looking at that book and trying to get it all out there and connect with the voters?
Yeah, I suspect it is like being a quarterback in the huddle running a game plan for a team. You've got a big playbook. You've got to synthesize that playbook. You've got to boil down to the stuff that you know is going to be critical. What are the absolute critical issues? By example, affordability is something we've spent an enormous amount of energy, resources, money on. It's certainly a subject of debate in this year's election. Well, if I think affordability and my plan for affordability is key to my getting elected, boy, am I going to make sure those 3 points are the ones I'm going to hit. Or, hey, am I qualified to be governor? And what are the 3 things that I can, really left hook, make a compelling point? So I think that's another aspect here. What are the absolute 2 or 3 areas, and then the 2 or 3 points within those areas where no matter what the questions are, you got to make sure you land those punches. Those are the things. You've got to be cool-headed about that because you're absolutely right. You've got an enormous amount of information. If you're not careful, you can get lost in the sauce.
Well,
and that, I think, is another challenge.
Yeah, because it's easy for staff to be there rattling off everything you have to say. There's a performance aspect to it. But how much of it is that performative versus ultimately just being yourself and, again, trying to connect with the voter?
Well, I think you got to be yourself. Notwithstanding that there are certain points you're going to have to make, you got to convince folks that you're genuine, that you're the word people use most often is authentic, that I'm real. And that's another point. I think telling your life story somewhere in the course of a debate is also incredibly important. Hey, this is who I am. This is how I grew up. These are the values that have been instilled in me. Those are really important to get across to folks that, hey, I can trust this guy or I can trust this gal to be our leader. One other thing that, Laura, that occurred to me, I always spent the last hour before the debate in a room by myself, just having written down a bunch of stuff. By the way, you can't bring the stuff you write down on stage. So you're writing it down and then leaving it in the room, but really concentrating on those points that you want to make by yourself in solitude. That's something I did every time out.
Yeah. So, I know our time is limited. So, final thoughts, at one point, you have those moments of solitude. You've listened to what your staff has said, people prepping you, you've gone through the rehearsals, but you're there on that stage and you never know what's going to happen. Can you just talk a little bit about, when you're there in that moment, when somebody's answering a question, asking a question, while you're trying to prepare, what am I going to say? Can you just talk a little bit about what that's like?
Yeah, so you got two things that I think are important. Number one, you could get distracted. I remember one of the debates I had with Jack, I think it was the second one in South Jersey. Somebody said to me afterward, "How was it?" And I said it was a hockey game, and that wherein a debate burst out. Just a huge audience participation, screaming and yelling on both sides for both candidates. So one thing is you can't get too distracted by what might be happening in the House. The second piece of wisdom I would have is if you're so focused on the points that you want to make, believe it or not, sometimes you can lose your ability to listen, which is a huge mistake. Easier to listen, Laura, if you're moderating to your question. That's fairly straightforward. You're looking at me, I'm looking at you. You're asking a question, I'm hearing it for the first time. That's generally straight up. But the part that's less straight up is when the other candidate is speaking. Because if you're not careful, you've heard the question and you're anticipating how you're going to frame your answer, and you might miss a nugget or two that the other person is saying that you could react to and really score some points. So that's the other thing. When you're on stage, don't get too distracted by what's going on in the audience, and make sure you keep listening keenly to the other candidate because you might pick something up that will make your answer a lot better.
Right. Because at the end of the day, only you know, oh, I could have said this. I wish I would have added that, but it's easy. Again, Monday morning quarterbacking. Now it's all about getting psyched up for the game, and you're on the sidelines for this one. And as we said, happily to do so this time around.
Amen. Good to be with you. I wish both of them the best of luck and look forward to seeing how it plays out.
Governor Phil Murphy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and giving this great insight behind the scenes. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Laura.